Hello and welcome to the Pembrokeshire Bird Diary for February 2020. I'm Annie Haycock from the Pembrokeshire Bird Group and I'm going to run through the events of the month. This was the wettest February since 1892. The map gives you an idea. Few places in the country had less than average or even average amounts of rainfall calculated against the last 40 years. Most of Pembrokeshire got away with only twice the average. Then there were the storms. 3 named storms in 1 month, and just the fact that a storm is given a name nowadays tells you it's a bad one. Hardly surprising then that there were fewer posts than usual in the bird sightings blog, and few photos, so most of those shown here were taken the previous winter. Still, the month started out well. The regular gull watchers were still looking for colour-ringed birds. At the Gann, 4 Mediterranean gulls came together from Poland, Germany and Belgium. A lesser blackback gull ringed as a yearling at a landfill site in Gloucestershire in 2008 misspent its youth down in the Algarve before returning to Gloucester in 2011. 9 years later, it's at the Gann, but no one has reported it in between times. A group of 20 enthusiasts turned out on a grey Sunday for the wader event at Angle Bay. The morning got off to a gentle start at the Rosscrowther shore, where the highlight was a small flock of around 30 pale-bellied Brent geese, accompanied by small numbers of widgeon, curlew, oystercatcher and redshank. Smaller waders were not in evidence here today, and large numbers of larger waders usually roost in the distance towards Swordern Point. The group moved on to Freshwater West and Gupton Farm, where they enjoyed good views of about 1,000 golden plovers and 300 or so lapwings. At Angle Village, the shingle spit provides a useful high-tide roost for waders and wildfowl. After putting up a few snipe along the way, the group were rewarded with a nice selection of waders on the shingle, including a flock of 23 knot, conveniently alongside a mixed flock of some 100 dunlin and 50 ring plovers for comparison. The highlight, however, was a flock of some 50 black-tailed godwits that eventually did the decent thing and took to the air, revealing their striking wing bars and tail pattern. Other waders on the spit included more curlews, oystercatcher and redshank. Of course there were other birds: shelduck, cormorant, a single great-crested grebe, a variety of gulls and a confiding little egret feeding in the creek. Meanwhile, at the Pembury Reservoir near St David's, 2 hooper swans had been present since the 28th of January. Hoopers are uncommon visitors to Pembrokeshire, usually just the odd 1 or 2 dotted around here and there. These 2 were joined later in February by an Iceland gull. By the end of the week, both the ring-necked duck and scaup that had spent January at Marlowe's Mere had moved to a smaller pond at St Bride's, where they were easier to see and photograph. The sun shone on Cardigan for a Pembrokeshire Bird Group walk around the Tivy marshes. 19 folk attended this one and were guided around some of the best spots by reserve manager Nathan Walton. The benefit of having a walk at this time of year is that birdsong is increasing, but the leaves have not yet come out, so when you hear a bird, you can often actually see it. Amongst the woodland birds there were long-tailed tits, blue and great tits, robins and wrens, and a great spotted woodpecker added a splash of colour. The reed bed, marshes and other watery habitats are the dominant features of the site. Out on the riverside there was the opportunity to admire teal, mallard, goldeneye and gadwall. The rivers and estuary held a good variety of other water birds. Waders included curlew, black-tailed godwit, redshank, and there were a variety of gulls. Little grebes and herons fished on the pools. While there was nothing spectacular or rare seen during the day, except a glimpse of what might have been a goshawk, there was plenty of variety in the different habitats. And of course there is the Glasshouse Cafe for a coffee and cake or a substantial lunch. So yes, I am unashamedly recommending a visit to the Tivy Marshes and the Welsh Wildlife Centre. It's good at any time of year. Storm Ciara swept across the whole of the UK on Sunday the 9th, bringing heavy rain and very strong winds. With the rough weather, there wasn't a lot of bird watching going on the following week. And then Storm Dennis arrived. Those of us going to the Friends of Skomer and Skokon meeting near Cheltenham wondered if we would actually get there or get back afterwards. But we did, and enjoyed some fascinating talks about the research work on the islands and caught up with a few old friends. February is always an unpredictable month for the Wetland Bird Survey. Many species are already beginning to move north, so are generally past their peak numbers. However, there is always an exception, and this year saw the peak midwinter count for turnstone, 71 of them scattered around the county. Turnstones are usually birds of rocky coasts, so it could be that the rough weather has pushed more of them into the shelter of the estuaries than usual. Often it isn't until you see something on a map or graph that you realise just how much things have changed. This is the case with pochard. We used to get over 200 of them, most of them at Bosheston Lily Ponds and Pembroke Mill Ponds. Then that dropped to around 100. Now the numbers are so low they hardly even show on the graph. And this winter was the first when none was seen in Pembrokeshire during a Webb's counts. The decline in wintering numbers has happened across Britain. It's thought to be due to habitat changes in the breeding range of the species, particularly eutrophication of ponds and lakes due to agricultural runoff in Eastern Europe. Shoveler are another relatively uncommon species in Pembrokeshire. They have a similar distribution across Eurasia, but also extend into North America. They seem to have increased in recent years, so perhaps you lose some and gain some. At the end of the month, some of our scarcer visitors were still here. 2 long-tailed duck with a scoter in St Bride's Bay, firecrests at Carew, and a great grey shrike that had been seen on and off since December at Plumstone. Storm Jorge was the 5th named storm of the 2019-20 season. It didn't make life easy for either birdwatchers or birds. These grey plover had a hard time avoiding the waves at Freshwater West. Well, that's a quick review of February 2020. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll be back for the March roundup.